I'm about to go to London on the radio to promote Unsolicited Material, a project that I would describe as never before, never again.
This program is brought to you by Resonance 104.4 FM.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Micro Clear Spot. My name is Ed Surname and I'm here with Aaron today, and we're going to have a chat that's very relevant to the social media generation because I filmed my life every day for 20 years, and we're going to be chatting about social media, how my film predated it, and really what it's like to follow a childhood dream. So I'll take it over to you, Aaron.
Yes, hello. Let's start talking about the project. So when did you originally come up with the idea, and when did you actually start filming every day of your life, is what I would like to know.
Right, well, back in 1998, I was much younger. This is basically 20 years ago. And I just always thought that real life is way funnier than any joke that you could write. Okay, so I'd love watching You've Been Framed rather than a sitcom. And I'd love watching my nan just interact in daily life. You know, going for a driving lesson and being told, go over the roundabout, and then she literally drives over the roundabout. Hearing about this sort of thing to me is funnier than any knock-knock joke.
Brilliant.
I started filming everything. Okay, and I never thought in 20 years I'm going to release a film. It just organically happened that I was interested in comedy, and I travelled to London and I did the circuit, and because the camera was on the whole way, in a nutshell, I was able to use that raw material to make a film about what it's like to follow your dreams. So it's a real life tragicomedy which asks the question, why would you want to follow your dreams, and what's the personal cost?
Okay, so would you say it was all raw, or was there some scripted bits as well? Did you come up with some preconceived ideas to film?
Well, the film is called Unsolicited Material, and if you were to say to me, is Unsolicited Material a mockumentary? If I said yes, that would be inaccurate. If you asked me if it was all real, that would also be inaccurate. Okay, so in real life, what's happened is I've used the raw material and I've been able to use it but edit it in a satirical way. Okay, so I'm looking at how the social media generation, they're desperate to satisfy their audience, and they're behind the mask of the comedian, you know, on the exterior there's all of this external happiness, and behind something's going on. You know, for a comedian to want to dedicate their life to make other people laugh, something's going on there. And that really was the basis of my radio show, the Stand Up Sit Down, which I did for years in Hammersmith. And we would introspect and psychoanalyze what was going on with people who wanted to do comedy. Okay, so the sentiment of that film is very authentic. The sentiment is looking at why people want to do it and the personal cost of following your dreams and dedicating yourself to making other people laugh. But the way that it's been structured and storyboarded, I've used a bit of creative license with what's gone on in my life, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. So one thing I personally do, I make YouTube videos, so I am a vlogger, and I kind of feel like it's shifted from something that is very entertainment based to something that is more personal. Would you say that that is something you try to do as well, to show a real person rather than a personality? Well,
I am a real person, spoiler alert, but I mean, it's the whole thing stands to speak for every comedian, because I've spoken to every comedian, every comedian that I've spoken to, all right, has always tried to deny that they wear a mask. And when I get to know them more, they all admit, you know, to some extent, that they are wearing a mask. And so, yes, the film is obviously about me because it looks at 20 years of my life. But it exists to speak for the world of comedy, and it satirizes the world of comedy. And I've got a lot of backlash from the world of comedy because they don't like that I'm putting a negative spin on their business, you know, because they put smiles on people's faces to get money.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, but to me, I didn't want to compromise anything. Art doesn't compromise, okay? I haven't compromised anything for anybody. This film, every frame of it is exactly how I want it to be. And you make enemies doing that sort of thing, to the point where I've literally had meetings, you know, in Warner Brothers, where they've said we could adapt this to a series. and they've expected me to say yes, and I haven't done that. I haven't. I've stuck to exactly the vision that I wanted to do, and so yeah, it is about me, but it talks about something bigger than that, which is this whole generation of vloggers that, to some extent, think that getting external validation is the answer to happiness.
That sounds very relatable. I mean, everybody thinks that validation is worth something. I wouldn't say it's the same as happiness, but validation is very, very much a big part of that, I'd say.
Well, I think that, I mean, to me, like, obviously, 20 years of my life, it took me from the age of 12 to 32. And so I've clearly learnt life lessons in that time, which is evident on the screen. And one of those lessons is I don't think that you should put happiness on a point in the future, and I don't think that you should equate happiness to being something you get externally. Okay, and I think that our generation growing up and the art and music and films that we watched, our generation was told, go for it, you can do it, follow your dreams, and it can pay off. And I think that's a really important message, but I think a caveat needs to be added, which is know what you're getting into and know what the personal costs are and know what you're going to pay for it. And my film adds that caveat.
That's fair enough. So at that point that you started filming basically everything, did you get people in your life telling you that it was a little bit weird? Because for people that do vlog, they get a lot of weird looks. Like if you were to see someone on the street talking to themselves or talking to a camera that filming themselves.
I invented that.
Yeah, you invented that. But I'd imagine people nowadays still get weird looks if that happens. So did people that you were close to, like your family, find it weird? Did you have any trouble getting into it in the first place?
Yeah, I think saying that they thought it was weird is probably cleaning it up in a quite polite way. I mean, not only, if someone crosses you in the street, they might think it's weird. And that meeting is very fleeting, whereas because my family were actually involved in the whole process, it was right there. The process that they went through was sort of like the process of what it's like going through a death or a bereavement. Like at first they were in denial, like, why us? Why is this happening to our family? And then, it would sort of be acceptance, begrudgingly acceptance.
They have no choice.
Yeah, and then like sort of genuine acceptance. But going all the way from that to actively helping it, I did go through a lot of trouble because they actively help it now because they see how constructive it was. But I went through a lot of trouble originally. I was, expelled from school for it. And because the content on screen, because I was filming all the time, I didn't think anyone's ever going to watch this 20 years in real time. But it was in my head in the early years that I wanted to get raw material on that was more than just cleaning your teeth, eating a meal, going for a walk or whatever. So the stuff I did at school was mad stuff, like jumping off bridges and jumping off the balcony and doing like stunts and stuff like that. And I got expelled for that because the camera was on. But I was too scared to show my parents the papers, so I hid the letter and I turned up again the next day and they carried on at school as if nothing had happened. So I officially was expelled because I was in the meeting where they signed it and sent it off and all that. But I just turned up and carried on. So my parents never knew to this day, unless they're listening to Resonance FM.
Well, let's hope they're not, for your sake. Did you end up getting like your diploma?
My diploma? Yeah, I got A levels.
So you finished school?
Yeah, I finished school, yeah.
But I did really well.
I was technically expelled, but I got like A's and A stars and stuff like that. But to me, like, that's another form of external validation. Like, an exam to me, like, I could just do that if I wanted to, but towards the end I didn't want to. There's more about... I don't agree with the education system because I don't think that they teach enough about, like, life generally. Like, they should teach social stuff.
Right, yeah.
And actual practical skills instead of... just going, here, how to do algebra, here's an A star. None of those A's and A stars have helped me in life at all. What I'm proud of myself for in life is I go out of my comfort zone. So coming to London, doing a radio show, doing live nights, stuff that most of the population would shy away from. This project, the biggest victory of this project is not making a film that started with VHS tapes and getting it screened at festivals and nominated and all of that, or the fact that it's on Amazon as an actual DVD release. That is not, to me, the biggest victory. The biggest victory is what I've learned inside that's gonna like serve me in life, which is just the idea that if you go for it, like in life, if you go for something where the chance of failure is spectacular, you've already won. You know, we need to change the metrics by which we judge success, and that's another thing that the film looks at.
So a hands-on way of learning rather than staying in your comfort zone, you would say.
I believe so.
So were you constantly aware of the camera, and were other people aware of the camera? Would you say some people like censored the way they spoke or the things they did because there was a camera? Like, as you were saying, you were jumping off balconies on camera. I would say, is there stuff that you cut out that was just not okay to show, or stuff like that?
Okay, so the first bit of if people censored themselves, right? So there's two answers to it really. The first one is people do censor themselves when they think there's a camera on. But the other thing is, with my project, it was a kid messing around with a video camera, and they never thought it would ever be like something that was part of a bigger project that's available on Amazon to watch worldwide. And so they probably censored themselves a little bit at first, but eventually, over time, my family became the most relaxed subjects of a documentary ever. And so with me also, okay, originally when I was filming in the early days, there was a bit of putting an act on and being aware that a camera was on me and thinking, oh, when I edit this for whatever project it was, originally it was a web series, by the way, so I haven't just not used any of the footage up until this film. I was filming knowing that it was going to go somewhere, just not necessarily into the film it's become. So yeah, I mean, I did sense myself a little bit, but because I was filming so much, I also caught my reactions after the fact. So if I was putting on like saying, oh, I'm not going to be nervous about this comedy show, I also got me being secretly nervous about the comedy show. And really it's those interesting bits there which show you behind the mask of the performer that made it into the film. And the second thing you asked was, did I ever need to cut anything?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. That's what a lot of the arguments have been about, and that's why I took it it was accepted into film festivals, but the reason I was keen to get it into the Camden Fringe last year and play it there at the Etc Theatre is because as a artist yourself applying to the Fringe, you can do whatever you want, and I didn't have to cut anything. So I'm really not keen on cutting anything, because then whose vision is it? You know what I mean? You end up with it not. I mean, when I speak to like people in the industry and stuff, they say, is it going to be funny? Or is it going to be like psychoanalytical and serious? But I'd say it's it's more funny than it's 51% funny and 49% psychoanalysis. And that's what I wanted it to be, because otherwise it'd just be like other things I see. And it certainly isn't that.
Because that's the thing comedians especially tend to do, is to go beyond the political correctness, I'd imagine. Have you noticed that with yourself as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason that I like comedy so much is because I don't like rules. And you realise, right, that when you get into the comedy industry, there are rules. Like, there are people trying to tell you to do this and that, and saying, oh, if I'll book you if you don't say that and stuff. I may as well be clocking in a supermarket if that's the road I'm going down. So I've never gone down that road. So it's cost me, but as I said before, it all depends by which metric you judge the success. Because it's cost me in terms of like bookings and stuff. But because that was my own choice, I'm in total control of what I'm putting out. So every single thing I put out, I'm 100% happy with it. And that's a quality that I'm happy to be a part of, rather than, get more bookings this year, but then no one's keeping track of that. Nobody cares. Everyone just cares about their own stuff. No one's it's whether you're happy with yourself, isn't it? And that really is, in a nutshell, the journey I went on in this film. I learned to stop getting external validation and learning to just do my own thing more. And the film would never have existed in a previous generation because it's so independent. The spirit of it is so independent. I even screened it at one of the festivals off my own laptop just to keep in with the independent spirit. I was just really worried, as people were watching there for an hour and a half, that there was going to be like an antivirus pop-up or something but it's never happened, but that was my concern. But yeah, the whole thing, it speaks for our generation and the independent spirit, and it's a victory for the YouTube generation, I really would say, because as I say, like it could not have existed literally back in the 80s.
That's fair enough, because you started all of this before the whole rise of the internet, and especially the rise of YouTube, which is now obviously very well known with the whole vloggers making, millions of dollars or pounds, I'd say. And you kind of went before that, and that is I would say that's very intriguing, that you kind of came up with the concept of filming yourself before people were doing it to get famous or get rich or whatever you would like to call it.
Yeah, I was never doing it to be famous either. I mean, I was doing it because I think my family's really funny, and I just wanted to make a real life sitcom, which I did really. My web series was called Laugh or Cry TV, and it was every Thursday on the internet, and then it made it onto YouTube. And it was just like, it was part sitcom and part real life. It was a sitcom that was mixed with going out and having real public interactions with a storyline and everything. And it just so happens that the end result of this film is that the storyline ends up being the narrative of my life. But, with all of that stuff, when I was making Laugh or Cry TV, a lot of the press coverage came from how unique it was, whereas now it would be like a drop in the ocean compared to all of the literally millions of people uploading to YouTube, isn't it? But back in the day, that's where a lot of the press coverage came from. So the arc of where I went with it is I'd come to London to do magazine interviews, and then I was a guest on a radio show myself. Then I got the radio show where I was hosting it, and that became weekly. And then I run a live night and did stand-up and all of that. But the whole thing on the surface looks like silly fun and games. But to me, the interesting bit was always that introspective bit, looking at what the personal cost is of dedicating your life to entertainment and why people want to do it. And the trouble is, the reward is so high. The reward at the very top, what I'm saying is, right, if you're stacking shelves, which I've done as well, the career ladder doesn't take you to the same heights as what the career ladder of show business could potentially do. I'm not saying you can click your fingers and make it happen, just potentially that career ladder is way more exciting. And so you're rewarding internal insecurity. Society is rewarding internal insecurity by going, come on performers, do this, do that. And it's, to me, it doesn't equate to internal happiness.
So you say you value the integrity of doing what you want and being who you want to be over the whole notion of success, I'd say.
Completely, yeah. And so I have that internally, but what the price I've paid for it is that in this film, I basically bare my soul. And so anyone looking in on it would think, oh my God, he's desperate for fame or something like that. Whereas if you really pay attention to the subtleties of the film, I was desperate for the project to pay off because I needed money to support my family who'd supported me throughout, as I wanted a baby with my wife and all of that. And so I won't go into any more because it would spoil the ending. But that's where the... what's the word? That's where the conflict, the internal conflict came in. I knew that it was wrong for me to carry on doing stand-up and go down that route. I knew it was costing me personally, but I'd come so far. I felt like I needed the money for my family, and so it looks at the dilemmas of artistic ambition. It looks at family life versus show business life, which is something that is kept behind the curtain.
Because one thing that is very, very common in stuff like that is that what we see nowadays with the YouTube generation as well, when, for example, they get approached by brands to help them, is the question, am I compromising my integrity for money, or am I being part of a brand that actually aligns with my own values? And that, I'd imagine, coming to that point where you have to decide, do I do it for the money or do I do it because I think it's a good step to take, is very much, I'd imagine, a very grey area.
I've lived through that. And I knew what I chose, and I'm pleased with the results, but it took 20 years.
Yeah.
It took me 20 years to get that lesson. If you watch it, it'll take you 90 minutes. But that's because it took me... I mean, the whole thing's insane. There's so many videos that it's literally tens of thousands. Starting on VHS tapes, going to 8mm and then mini DV. And now, you'd have never predicted it. You could put it in your pocket, a little SD card. And so going through... I got so much footage, I could have made the same film in terms of its sentiment using completely different footage. The episodes of my web show, there was about 100 and we're on about 140 at the moment, because to an extent it's still going. And I didn't lift much of that footage. I used completely new stuff. So people who'd watch the web show won't be seeing a film that's just a highlight form of that. It's not. It's all new footage. You know what I mean? And that took like ages. As you can imagine, editing takes a long time. People don't know that, and it's a thankless job editing, because if you watch an editing thing, if you watch something where it's been edited, you don't go, oh, what good editing. You only bring up editing in conversation if it's bad. You go, that was edited no good. You know, so, and most of the people won't know that it takes so long to do like 1 minute of footage. You're probably familiar with it because you do, you know, with what you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I personally haven't had this thrown at me, but there's a lot of people who are doing quite well on YouTube who get told off in a way that all they're doing is sitting in front of a camera and talking, but people don't really tend to understand how much goes into it. You have to think of a concept, you have to work on so many different things that together make a good video, or in your case make a good film, and they tend to overlook the fact that you are doing sound, you are doing editing, you are doing lighting, you are doing all these things that have to do with film and video making, and they don't see that because all they get to see is 6 to 10 minutes of you doing it right. And as long as you do it right, people will go, oh, well, that's easy, I could do that. It's until they start trying it themselves, and I noticed that when I tried doing it myself, it was so much harder than I anticipated. I was like, I don't actually know how to use any of this software that I'm trying to edit in. I don't know how to make it look like I'm not washed out and have a different skin tone to my actual skin tone. It's so intricate and difficult to do, and some people just don't seem to understand that. And I'd imagine that you would have the same thing where people look at your project and go, well, why are you doing that?
Yeah, and the beauty of my project is I can include whatever I wanted. So it's got the clip of me punching the garage door at the frustration of exactly what you've just described.
Fair enough.
You know, and other frustration along the way, things like, oh, I'm in a national newspaper and I've been completely misquoted. All of that stuff is so frustrating. You really get me going from like being really, really high in the film and all of the really good euphoric feelings you can get when things go well. You also get me going really down, you know, and that is a common thing in show business, but it's hidden because when you're on stage, it's just making people laugh, you know. But what I'm really interested in is the psychoanalysis of all of that sort of thing. So, I mean, because the project's so, like, you know, multifaceted, it's very hard to get it into a sentence. So if I was going to sell it right now to someone who'd not heard anything about it, if you're tuning into Resonance FM right now, I'd say that I play the part of a deluded video blogger that thinks that his ticket to fame and fortune is to film his life 24/7. The twist is that I actually did use my home videos over 20 years as raw material to make that. So it's a satirical tragicomedy on what it's like to follow your dreams. It's a tragicomedy about life and not putting happiness on a point in the future, and the backdrop is comedy.
Right. Would you say that you can see people doing the exact opposite of what you did and going, oh, this is a way to become big and get money fast, let's try this out, whereas you started with no clue whatsoever what you were going to do?
Yeah, and just to clear it up, I don't think they'd ever look at me and my bank balance and go, oh, this is a way to get rich quick, do what he did.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, I do see people doing the complete opposite, but I do have faith in our generation, because I think that, you know, I really think that we have got like a good handle on like we've got a good handle on like the internet having brought the world smaller, and a lot of content that I look at, the last like 3 films I've watched, for instance, and maybe even the last number of songs, it's all independent content, so we can pick and choose what we watch, and there's independent voices out there. It's not broadcast straight across the, you know, the BBC, where it's broadcast around the country. Not everything is like that, but we do have access to all this different stuff. Now, yeah, there are plenty of people that are vlogging thinking, oh, look at me, look at me, look at me, and all of that stuff, but I really don't think that they get a lot of lasting attention. They might still get the most hits, they might, because it's quick, you know, it's clickbait and stuff like that, but I think that stuff that actually leaves a lasting impression with people is going to be the people that have the messages. And so I think over time, in our generation, it's going a good way.
I feel that, because that's what I try to do with my content personally, because I don't make 4 videos trying American sweets, and I don't go running around and pranking people and stuff like that. I try to talk about things that go on in life, things that everybody, or in my experience anyway, everybody goes through. Things like mental health and being afraid of the future, like not knowing what you're going to do with your life and stuff like that. And that's very much a place I'm in right now, and I feel that other people could benefit from knowing what I'm going through and how I'm hopefully eventually going to get past that. And I'd imagine that is something that shows in your film as well, because it is obviously like a collection of 20 years of you growing into the person you are now, which I'd say you've done a good job.
Thank you.
And yeah, I mean, if seeing as you said you started when you were 12, I'd imagine you were someone who didn't know that much about how the world works, and I very much know that I at like 16 didn't know anything about the world, and I'm still learning. So yeah,
so what you're saying, you know, the stuff that you make and my film is stuff that starts a conversation, and I think it's a worthwhile conversation. It's about what fulfills us as people and how we connect. And if you go and search for unsolicited material on IMDb or YouTube, you search for the trailer, Ed Surname, unsolicited material, watch the trailer there, and on the face of it, you will laugh because there is ridiculous things in it. You'll have never seen anything like it. But as you can see from this conversation, it starts a conversation that's very serious, and is something that is quite psychoanalytical and not something that's immediate on the surface. And the stream is only $3.99 if you go on to Amazon and search for unsolicited material. And, you know, in the words of my dad, you know, will anyone buy it for $3.99? In fact, will anyone buy it for any price, Edward? It remains to be seen, because I haven't checked my bank account yet.
Fair enough. So my last question for you is, what's up next?
Yeah, I mean, I've been promoting this film for like so long that I can't wait to start the next project, which is going to be a book, because I've got, you know, 19 years of deleted scenes, and there's so many things that's happened. You know, me being in a situation where I've got no choice but to have to pretend to be my wife's granddad, having to fit 9 people into a car, developing a stage show with my real life stalker. All of this stuff didn't even make it into the film, and so a book is the place for it. That's what I'm going to start to do.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. I've got a bit, yeah.
This program has been brought to you by Resonance 104.4 FM. If you liked what you heard and want to support our work, please make a donation at fundraiser.resonance.fm.